Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Mise. My name is John. That's Ian.
What's up?
It is episode 83. Brawl so hard, R&D gotta ban me.
Again.
Yeah. So, we're going to talk about Brawl, because turns out that both of us were getting kind of how time works. There was an announcement today, the day of recording, May 10th, about Brawl, including a few things we're going to talk about, and basically the ban list and a few other things, and then we're going to carry on that discussion into ban lists in general.
Yeah. So for me, it was more of it was my bad. I'm going to straight up say it. I was like, it's Tuesday. I was shopping. He's like, hey, you want to record? I'm like, oh, it's Wednesday. Yeah, totally forgot it was a Tuesday. Or I thought it was a Tuesday. No, the funny part is, too, is like the night before. And he's like, hey, what do you have to do tomorrow? I'm like, well, I'm going to work out. I'm going to go grocery shopping. Got to record the podcast. I actually mentioned it, too, and just completely just brain farted it out. But whatever. It happens.
We've all had those moments.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, real quick, as in the community, because it's our show, so whatever. On Thursday, I put up a video of me doing a Dominaria draft. I drafted Blue Red Wizards. It was a lot of fun. You should go watch it. It's on the YouTube channel. I'll put a link to it in the show notes below. And then I just recorded a new one today, and that should go up in the next few days, that I am also really excited about, because I drafted 3 Flame of Celts.
Mono Red.
This is the second time I've drafted Mono Red in this format. It's really weirding me out.
Like, I know I watched Gabby try and do Goblin Tribal, but only realized, like...
Yeah, there's not that many goblins.
It's not there's not enough support for Goblin Tribal in Standard, or not Standard, in Draft. Standard is a little different. Draft...
You want to know what the goblins are in Dominaria? Well, there's 4. There's Skirk Prospector, Bloodstone Goblin, which is the bear goblin that if you kick a spell, it gets +1/+1 and menace till end of turn. Goblin War Chief, which is probably the best goblin for limited if you're trying to do goblins. And then Siege Gang Commander. And that's it.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it's like, heck yeah, we got it back, but a lot of it seems to be more the spelled out for, hey, look, we got these in Modern now. You have to see make a splash in Modern yet, but we'll see.
Well, Siege Gang has been in Modern for a while, but War Chief and Prospector are the huge boons. Like, I don't know if you've seen the Fecundity Goblins deck.
Yeah, it took me a while to realize, like, I'm like, I do keep a semi-eye on the MTG stocks and, price movers and shakers kind of lists and stuff. And Fecundity jumping up, I'm like, what the hell is this card doing here? And then I realized, oh, right, goblins. So, John, what's Fecundity? So,
Fecundity is an enchantment for 2 and a green. I believe it reads, I'm doing this from memory, whenever a creature dies, its controller may draw a card. So, with Skirk Prospector...
Correct.
And it's symmetrical, so it's both players. Yeah. And with Skirk Prospector, you can sack it to add a mana and draw a card, which is very powerful. But then Skirk Prospector turns your Mogg War Marshals, which, by the way, are 1 in a red, 1/1 goblins with Echo for 1 in a red. When it comes into play or leaves play, make a 1/1 goblin. It turns Mogg War Marshal plus Skirk Prospector into 3 mana for 2 mana and 3 cards. So, essentially, once you assemble that combo, you start really digging through your deck, casting a bunch of goblins, digging through your deck some more. You can cast Empty the Warrens to make 10 more goblins, to then make more mana, to draw more cards.
Grape Shot.
And then eventually you kill them with Grape Shot.
Oh, it's a Storm deck. Okay.
Yeah, it's a Storm deck.
And you're not playing it, why?
Because I already have a Storm deck. I don't need more Storm decks.
Cheeky.
It's too That's cheeky. Also true. It is very cheeky. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about Brawl. Because article went up today, May 10th, titled The Future of Brawl, written by Gavin Verhey and co-written with one segment written by Ian Duke, both members of R&D, basically being like, hey, this is taking off a lot better than we thought it would, so we need to kind of change our philosophy a little bit.
Yeah. With that, he outlined 5 big points, and it kind of circled around... focused in on what Gavin was mentioning in an article we wrote last week about this being the feedback era, meaning they're like ever more looking at, what the community's talking to and really going hard off of, hey, what the community might want, kind of thing like that. So that said, he outlined 5 of his main points behind Brawl philosophy, or Brawl philosophy. Wow. This is going to get confusing in this episode, I already can tell.
It's been confusing for the past month, so you're not alone.
Yeah, so the 5 philosophies, the guiding philosophies they have right now are: Brawl has 2 important audiences, don't fracture Brawl, Brawl uses standard card pool, protect what makes Brawl fun, and Brawl should receive wizard support. We're going to touch on a little bit in pieces of these things, but mainly just getting to see that, like, hey, this is where they're coming from with it. Again, just absolutely great to see.
Oh, absolutely. Considering that there's other formats that some people would like to see Wizards take a little bit more of a hands-on approach to, like Pauper. But the fact that Brawl has, 1, really resonated with people, and 2, was Wizards-led in many ways, really makes it so that, taking ownership of the format and making sure that it has the support it needs and the structure it needs is important.
I've seen some formats, like, kind of flare up like, hey, this could be cool, and then just die because of no support. Looking at you, tiny leaders.
Or Frontier. I mean, Frontier's not dead, but it's basically dead.
And funnily enough, so earlier today, I actually want to mention, like, Yoel Larson posted a tweet about pre-modern.
Which I don't even want to know about this format.
It's basically the mid-ground between old school Magic and modern, where it's like those middle kind of sets and stuff like that. I would assume.
Oh, so it's like 95 to Mirrodin, basically?
I don't know. It's like, I saw somebody say, oh, is this kind of just like is this like old school for people who started playing in the late 90s, early 2000s? Which is, it seems to kind of be like that, but it's still playing like Swords to Plowshares and stuff like that. So,
well, yeah. Anyways, that's far be it from us to tell you how to have your fun.
You get the cons / onslaught fetches, which is the worst.
Yeah, that's good though.
Either way, no, so seeing like the support it's getting is great, especially because they're the ones that created it, which is like, we haven't really seen this kind of like support from Wizards for a format like this. I mean, they support EDH, but Commander is kind of run by its own people, but they like, it's become such a large beast of its own that they kind of like have to help guide it along.
Yeah.
But to certain degrees. That said, Brawl, I have not played or brewed a deck yet. It's one of those just more of a time thing as opposed to, oh, this format doesn't look fun to me. It's just like, the format looks so fun to the point where it's like, if I'm going to, brew for this, I want to give it a good shot kind of thing.
Yeah, and like I said initially when I heard about Brawl that it may not be for me, but after, I had a bunch of my friends build Brawl decks locally, and I'm like, all right, fine. You guys build Brawl decks, I can build a Brawl deck. And I could have built like Baral, Chief of Compliance, or I could have built whatever, but I was like, you know what, I'm just going to look at what, silly legends I have from Standard and floating around, and Timid, Vizier, and Noctamoon. He looks fun. So I just built a Embalm / Eternalized Tribal deck with Timid as the commander, because also he skirts around the commander tax really funny ways. First time you cast him, he's 2 mana, then you embalm him for 5, then you cast him for 4, then you embalm him for 5, then you cast him for 6, and so on and so forth. So every other time you cast him, he's only going to be 5 mana, which is nice. And I've been having a lot of fun with that deck, both playing one-on-one as well as kind of in multiplayer games. And I think that Brawl does have quite a few legs. It's less intimidating than a commander deck because it's only 60 cards, and also because you can play it kind of 1v1 or multiplayer. It's, less of a hassle to worry about, someone playing turn 1 Soul Ring in like one-on-one commander or doing other kind of silly busted things as well. Like the fact that there's a 1v1 commander and regular commander, they have different ban lists, has always been a little confusing.
And now we're getting it kind of here, but not quite. 1v1
not quite the same.
1v1 and multiplayer are still sharing the same what's it called?
Ban list.
Yeah, so in effect it's more of like how when they created it, it's kind of like how modern, it's like, hey, when we started this, we have this ban list in place, and now we're tweaking it. We'll get to the bans and unbans in a little bit, but you did mention the 2 audiences, multiplayer and one-on-one. So groups of people versus one-on-one, you're going to tune your decks where multiple players, anybody who's played Commander will know, you'll look for the all-important each opponent as opposed to target player. Like, that's probably going to be your biggest difference between your multiplayer and one-on-one decks, is you're going to want to look for symmetrical effects versus single target effects. But they realize, though, that the spiky players are going to want to go one-on-one. And I've seen, again, tweets about people talking about, like, Yeah, like for instance, it was retweeting my feed. I don't know who the player was, but it was like some PPT grinder. It's like, yeah, my PPTQ grinder group just absolutely love the format. It's kind of like, okay, we're kind of like spent on actually grinding games for right now. Let's just go play a game of Brawl because they already have the cards because they're already grinding standard anyway. So
yeah,
they've already made plus. It's getting some people, newer players that don't really play Magic before into Magic. For instance, my friend Chris Fugi. Fugi is like, when we were at GP Seattle, he came up and we were just like cracking booster boxes. Yeah, I know, cracking booster boxes for no value, blah, blah, blah. But he was just like, cracking open boxes of Ixalan and Rivals to grab dinosaurs to make a dinosaur deck. Why? Because he just wanted to do it. And it's something you could do. And we ended up drafting some of the cards, but still, it's just like, it's kind of fun seeing like how some players are getting into it. It's like, hey, I just have the ability to get these boxes. I'm just going to crack a bunch of boxes and see what I can make out of it. Or, just do that kind of thing. One
of the earliest games of Brawl I played, I was sitting at Comic City, local game store here, and my friend Danny he brought all his Dominaria cards and said, all right, you guys wait 10 minutes, I'm going to build a Brawl deck. And he did, and then he played, and it did pretty well.
But yeah, so just the fact that kind of stuff is cool. I mean, you can like sit down, brew really hard, fret about your last your 55th through 60th cards in your deck, or you can just be like, I got a pile of cards here. I'm going to sort through it. There's a relative theme going on here. All right, cool. Let's jam. You can do either way and still have fun. Again, multiplayer is definitely going to be better for that kind of thing because you don't have the onus of, one person targeting you every turn, where you can kind of get away with a little more janky stuff, but still. Anyway, so speaking of like multiplayer and stuff, the second point was don't fracture it. The main point Gavin gave is like, you don't want somebody coming to, a game store and, you sit down, I have a standard Brawl deck, and you're like, let's Brawl. And someone's like, well, I've got modern Brawl. And I was like, I got like invasion block Brawl. It's like, well, then you're all playing on different power levels necessarily. So keeping what the focus of Wizards want is just on standard specifically is more just a way to kind of be like, hey, we're simplifying it down to this format legality. You guys can go do that other stuff if you want, but we're not going to affect any changes or ban lists to these other, I guess unsanctioned Brawl variants. Right. Like the ones we're going to look at are standard based and standard based only.
And obviously with standard, there's the worry about rotation, especially in a casual format, because this is the first time that we've actually gotten a casual format that has a rotation element to it, which can be troublesome for some. And it's definitely, I think, one of the biggest concerns with the format going forward. But it's definitely a lot of fun just right now to, sit down. Dominaria has so many legends that I would be very surprised if enough people were exploring all of them for Brawl right now.
Yeah, and that's actually point number 3 they make, is it uses a standard card pool where they're dealt, like he actually mentions the fact that it's a tricky needle of thread. Like literally, those are Gavin's words exactly because of the casual format thing, not rotating. Because of this, they've actually mentioned that they're going to be looking in R&D at making sure that they're able to like maintain certain kinds of color combinations as viable Brawl commanders, just to make sure the format's alive. Granted, they got to make sure not to overpower for standard or draft or whatever, but there's always those cards that whenever we're doing that set review, everyone's just like, yep, EDH card, and pops it off to the side. Like we might be getting something that looks like, oh, Brawlmander, pop over the side.
Yep.
But just having that kind of thing is really kind of great to know that they are they're like, hey, look, mentioning in the article is like, hey, look, we're aware of this. We're tracking. We got this. We're going to take your feedback. If you have additional feedback, please give it to us, kind of thing.
Oh, of course.
And the thing is, them deciding to say, hey, we want to stay with standard is because of feedback they've gotten from players.
Yeah. All of these big 5 notes for the Brawl philosophy have been because of people's feedback. And then we'll get to a few of the other ones later. But point 4 really kind of hammers this home. It's protected what makes Brawl fun. And how do you find out what makes Brawl fun? You listen to the people who are playing the format. And I think the 4 kind of points here or the 4 bullet points that Gavin lays out, the varied singleton nature. Everyone loves Commander because of its high variance level of play, even though many players will attempt to reduce that variance with, tutors and whatnot. building around a character, whether or not you're going to build like a theme deck around, Muldrotha or Danitha or Raph or whoever, or like Teferi.
Joyra.
Considering you could do Planeswalkers, Joyra, exactly. Lets you use the ability to use cards you wouldn't otherwise use in Constructed, I think is the biggest kind of push. And my friend Danny, like I mentioned before, he was like, I think I like Brawl a lot more than I thought I would because I'm seeing a lot more newer cards than I would have if I was just playing Commander, which is very, very true. Like, you have a Commander deck, you may only get 1 or 2 cards every set. But with a Brawl Commander, sure, you only have 60 cards, but the power level of those cards could drastically change. And then the last one is that the format is accessible, is that it's easy to put a Brawl deck together. And using standard cards means no one has to go and try to shell out $100, $200 for a Gaia's Cradle. Or, shell out, who knows how much money for some of the other pieces of very powerful Commander cards that have spiked because Commander is so popular.
Yeah, like doubling season.
Exactly. That's a huge one.
Like that card enables so many crazy cool decks, but the problem is that it's like a $60 card and it's only been printed twice. And to jam it into, a standard set would be kind of hard. So, and not only you mentioned too, like just even like Commander decks in general, think about standard decks. There are certain cards that will make a standard deck. There are certain cards that will make a modern deck. Some kind of sneak their way into Legacy, like Fatal Push has. But odds are you're only going to see some of these cards if you draft, and even then you might not ever play them.
Right.
Like, you might end up seeing a bunch of random cards you'll never ever see in any other format, just because, hey, it happens to work in this particular Brawl deck.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. I mean, and we kind of gloss over real quick the singleton nature of it. That's why I love Canadian Highlander. I have a 100-card deck, and it's powerful as hell, but the thing is every single game I play will be different. I will never get a game where my mid-range Jeskai deck will play the same way. Like, I've had games where I've gone just pure aggro and killed, like, one of the games I went against, oh man, totally blanking on his name. Blake, right, wow. When I went, oh boy. Anyway, when I went against Blake and stuff like that, I had a game where I basically stuck a turn 2 Seeker of the Way and had him dead by like turn 6.
Yeah.
And then there are other games where I won't even get a win con on the board until turn 10. It's like, I'll be like, pick off one by one, trade for counters, trade for removal, kind of thing like that with my mid-range deck, which is what it does. And that kind of very game nature is stuff that I just love. Like, granted, I like the consistency of some constructive formats, but it's a nice change of pace, which is great. And wizard support, which is something that unfortunately Highlander doesn't have yet, probably never will, but it's all good.
Yeah, there's a few issues with Canadian Highlander that would need to get addressed.
Absolutely, but I know that's like my pipe dream though. Like, I don't care. Course. Like, Pauper, yeah, cool, maybe someday, but like getting side events, that's good enough for me right now. Like, heck, even you can do Turbo Town with Canlander, that's fine. Like, that's great. But Brawl receiving wizard support, I mean, because it's a Wizards created thing. Now, granted, they did create it, but they created it with multiplayer in mind and hadn't really kicked the tires really around on 1v1. And that's why we're seeing a bunch of more changes kind of directed at the 1v1 versus the multiplayer aspect right now, is because they kind of explored the space for multiplayer already. They didn't really dig hard into 1v1.
Right.
At least, like, spike hard 1v1. Like, I'm sure they played 1v1 in-house. It'd be dumb to think they didn't. But
yeah, but all the stories we heard about them kind of like making up this format was people playing multiplayer.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of one-on-one.
Yeah. But the wizard support thing is, like I mentioned already, the R&D, this is where the R&D thing about the Brawl legendary creatures and planeswalkers coming up, so a good spread of colors. They're like, some colors don't have Brawl commanders, Joda aside. I mean, you could literally just jam Joda, play Joda, and just, if you have
all the colors.
Well, not even all the colors. Say there's a color combination that's not represented right now. Like, right. That's fine. Naya has a bunch because of the dinosaurs, blue, black, red because of the pirates, and the Nicol Bolas and stuff. So you have options for those particular color combinations where something, I was going to say Jess Kevin, like, oh, it's got Joda. Abzan. I don't think there's nothing Abzan. So that's white, black, and green. There's no Abzan. There's no Abzan commander, right? Brawlmander, basically, unless you go Joda.
Which is fine.
But then you'd have to, like, play blue and red.
You don't have to.
Well, I mean, yeah, you don't have to ever play Joda, but you can literally just use it as, hey, I'm using this to make sure that I have these 3 colors represented in my commander.
Back before we had, the 4-color commanders, there were a lot of people who would use 5-color commanders as, for their 4-color decks or whatever. So
I wasn't around playing for that kind of thing, but I'm absolutely positive that's what people did. Either way.
Speaking of all the colors, let's talk about none of them. Because there was one big kind of point that they did have to address, which is, what if I want to play Karn as my Brawl commander?
Not Hopagirper?
Well, you could also do Hopagirper if you want, or Traxos if you want to be more in that line. But
Smashy bashy.
Unfortunately, due to how the commander color identity rules work, you can't play basic lands outside of wastes in a colorless commander deck. So how did Wizards figure out how to let people use Karn or Hope or Traxos or whatever as their legendary for Brawl? Well, the solution is very, very simple.
Enter Matt Tabak.
Yeah, Matt Tabak, former rules manager, current editor for Magic the Gathering. Basically, you can choose to put as many basics into the deck as you want of the usual 5 basics: plains, islands, swamp, mountains, or forests, but you can only choose one. So you can have 20 plains, you can have 20 forests, but those are your only basics. You can't put in a mountain, you can't put in a swamp, you can't have 15 forests and 5 plains. No, none of that.
Yeah, it's
just one basic.
It's all or none, because that way you can basically just be like, these are one color, but yeah. So that way, like, you aren't trying to sneak by something crazy. But it's also a way just to, make it monotone, like colorless cards are. Speaking of Karn, though, Karn's ridiculous, and Karn's amazing.
Karn's a very good Magic card.
We all, underestimated Karn.
He's seen play in Legacy and Vintage.
We underestimated how good Karn is.
We did. We all messed up.
We all done goofed. This is like JVP 2.0.
Speaking of done goofed, the next part of the article is by Ian Duke, and it's about separating the Brawl banned list from the standard banned list. And so, in order to do so, here are the cards that have been unbanned from the standard ban list for the Brawl ban list: Aetherworks Marvel, Felidar Guardian, Attune with Ether, Rogue Refiner, Rampaging Ferocidon, and Ramanop Ruins. The lone card still on the ban list, Smuggler's Copter.
It's just
because that would be so good.
It's just too good, even for a singleton format.
It's super swingy. Like I get to play my copter on 2, man. Baby. Yeah, that would be way too good. So yeah, cat combo is available if you wanted to do it. However, I believe there's literally only one commander you could use to play cat combo.
Jodh
Joda. Man, that was deep cuts.
Yeah.
Also, Aetherworks Marvel doesn't have as many broken things to spin into anymore. There's no Eldrazi. Sure, you could play 5-color Joda, and then you get to spin into Nicol Bolas or whatever.
Yeah.
But the mono red's a little bit better. But at the end of the day, being singleton means that a lot of these cards become less impactful because you're not going to run up against someone who's playing Ramanop Red, and it's Mountain, Ramanop Ruins, Ramanop Ruins, Ramanop Ruins, and you just go, I am looking at 6 damage just on your lands.
Yeah, here it's I have 2 damage sitting there. Lol. Okay.
Yeah. But they also banned 2 more cards from the format to put on the ban list to join Smuggler's Copter, so it's only 3 cards. One of them is Baral, Chief of Compliance. This one is pretty much exclusively for how he's doing in one-on-one play. According to the article, over the initial weeks, Brawl decks constituted more than 35% of the metagame and achieved a nearly 65% win rate. And in the 2 most recent Magic Online one-on-one Brawl challenges, the majority of the top 32 decks used Brawl as a commander, 24 decks and 23 decks respectively. So, he needed to go.
Yeah. For you kids at home, 24 out of 32 is literally 75%.
Yeah.
Three quarters of the decks were one commander because it's a Brawl challenge. You're going to want to spike it because the prizes are great. You get a whole set redemption if you win one of those things. You're going to want to spike it. So, of course, you're going to play the best deck. And the best deck is the most oppressive deck, which is Brawl.
The other card that hit the ban list is Sorceress Spyglass, which, in case you forget, is a 2-mana artifact that, as it comes into play, you choose a player and you get to look at their hand, and then you get to name a card, and then that card's activated abilities can't be activated. They basically banned it because one of the decisions for Brawl was letting people use Planeswalkers as their commanders, and they wanted to remove the feel bad of someone going, okay, you're playing, You're playing Ingrath? Okay, cool. Sorcerer Spyglass naming Ingrath.
Yeah, it's
not
not
then
even,
you're sad.
Yeah, and that's not even counting the fact that, like, you play Sorcerer Spyglass, you get to look at the hand and then say, yeah, your commander, you can never play that unless you can remove my card.
Yeah.
And certain decks literally have no way of removing an artifact.
It's true.
Good luck.
They also considered Gideon's Intervention, which is 2 white. You name a card, and then all damage dealt to you by that card is prevented, and your opponents can't cast the named card, as well as the Immortal Sun. But they chose not to ban those because Gideon's Intervention is strictly white, and then Immortal Sun, it costs 6 mana. So
and really only the Immortal Sun does is shut down Planeswalker commander decks, because Immortal Sun, 6 mana legendary artifact. Players can activate Planeswalker loyalty abilities. Literally, your commander is useless.
Yeah. It's also, again, 6 mana. I mean, I have the Immortal Sun in my Brawl deck, and I think almost every Brawl deck I've come up against has the Immortal Sun in it, but the Immortal Sun's also just good, so...
Yeah, I honestly think you're dumb if you're not playing the Immortal Sun in any Brawl deck, unless you're like a low to the ground, not want to paying 6 mana kind of deck.
Or your commander's a Planeswalker, but, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Speaking of other changes, due to the fact that standard cards, or all Magic cards for the most part, are built along the idea of your opponent starts the game at 20 life. They have decided that for one-on-one play only, your starting life total is now 20. But in multiplayer play, your starting life total will be 30 to help engender a more casual-like atmosphere and letting people get to do their huge, big, fun stuff that they've always wanted to do.
And, like, to be fair, when I saw, like, what's the 1v1 commander? The commander's like 30, right?
Commander's 40.
A 1v1?
Oh, 1v1 commander actually went down to 20 not too long ago, I want to say.
Right. Yeah.
They had this weird experiment where it was like they went to 30, then they went to 25, and then aggro still wasn't good, and they went to 20, and then aggro was too good, and 1v1 commander doesn't know what it wants.
1v1 commander's a little on the weird side. Let's just, like, you go play over there in that sandbox, and we'll be over here. Thanks. But
yeah,
no,
it's a little weird.
All right, and I want anyone to say, like, I'm not slagging on 1v1 commander players, because the format looks fun. However, it's a weird beast because you have the Magic Online 1v1 rules, and then you have, like,
French list,
French dual commander, and we're not even going to touch the French dual commander because that one has a really weird ban list.
Yeah, they still have banned as commander.
Yeah. I'll touch on it for a brief second. Basically, decent burn cards are banned in the format.
Yeah, that's weird. That's a weird one.
Because apparently the people who run the ban list are like, nope, don't like ban, or don't like burn, get out of here. It's weird. Whatever.
That was such a weird decision. I don't understand it.
It's whatever. I'm not going to try and delve into that. But anyway, I like the fact that it's a 20 life thing. Granted, this will also kind of... Now, the thing that I'm curious about, and maybe you can answer this one better, John, is that do you think that this might actually fracture how some people build their decks? Like, you know, you might build a deck that can play both 1v1 or multiplayer, but with one being at 20 life and one being at 30, is it better to streamline your 1v1 kind of build? Maybe have, like, flex spots where it's like, okay, in multiplayer I'm playing these cards, but in 1v1 they come out and these cards get in.
I mean, it's something that you could definitely do. I feel like the real segmentation is going to happen on Magic Online, where people are playing, you know, Brawl for actual prizes. But I feel like, you know, being able to say, hey, this is my Brawl deck, and I have, you know, these 6 to 5 cards, or even 10 cards that I swap out, you know, depending on who I'm, like, whether I'm playing multiplayer or one-on-one, it's definitely something that happens. I think that's something that's more likely to happen is people having a separate one-on-one deck as to a multiplayer deck, which is still fine. And, you know, your one-on-one decks might still function well in, you know, multiplayer. But It's going to depend. I think it all depends on whether or not how the pilot feels about their deck. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And what's nice is they also said some future plans in here too, in terms of, again, reemphasizing the feedback being, very, important and a cornerstone right now of getting this relatively new format off the ground. Which, by the way, Gavin has praised the user, the player base out there for helping them, because they can lead a horse to water, but you can't get it to drink. And Magic's like, hey, look, cool new singleton format. We made this. Do you like? And the player base is like, we like it. I like
this
a lot.
This is yours. This is mine. I made this.
This is. I know I was starting to go down that route, and I'm like, pull up.
No, it's fine.
But no, it's great that they're glad that they wanted to set out to make a fun, casual-esque format that's not on the super spike side or potentially pricey side like EDH, and they've done it so far.
Yeah, and also there's been discussions internally because of people externally talking about Brawl products, Brawl events, Brawl all sorts of other things, and they obviously can't spill the beans quite yet, but they wanted to let us know that they are, discussing and listening to our feedback and figuring out whether or not, how it's going to grow from here.
Oh yeah, and kind of just touching on that one last thing. Some other people, some people, like I kind of mentioned, people had like some impressions that the bans were good or bad, and like they, I mentioned this tweet to you. It's from Hackworth. The simplicity, like just having the standard ban list at the beginning was fine, and they could tweak from there. It was like I said, I mentioned the modern thing where it's like, hey, we start off with this already problematic thing. They started modern off with cards that were banned in standard, like Jace the Mind Sculptor and what's her name, Stoneforge. Yeah. They started off with that and a couple other things. The first tournament they had was like insane, and Storm was ridiculous. So they started banning things out from that. It's still it's still in the same deck, but just having like an initial ban list for the format was fine. The fact that it's popular enough where, hey, we've had to make a ban outside of the normal ban and restricted list within a couple weeks of the format coming out. Like this thing came out beginning of April?
Basically, yeah.
Something like March. That. Yeah, end of March, beginning of April. That's like a month. Like we've had like a month and a week basically where this has been like a format. I remember everyone was like, the first big place where people were really excited to get their hands on Brawl decks and play was for GP Seattle, which is the first week of April. Yeah. So people like had like a week or two to scramble to grab a deck together and start playing. So in a month, they've already it's hit the popularity where they've had to implement a ban list change and say, hey, we actually see how popular this is. We're going to make this stuff. And the fact that not only did R&D see it, but the community also hit kind of on the same points in terms of, hey, we've noticed these issues, and R&D's like, yeah, cool, we solved them too. We got you.
Yeah.
And they're willing to possibly do more to make sure, just in case like something gets out of hand. We'll see if it gets added to the BNR.
We'll see how ridiculous the current format can get. Although I don't think that there's going to be too many ridiculous things that can happen in this format, considering considering they already banned the Baral, the highest metagame deck, and then they banned Sorcerer Spyglass, kind of for the more, more fun side of things. We'll see how the format develops from here, especially once we get beyond, Dominaria and Core 2019, and then I believe the fall set is Spaghetti.
Yeah, it's Spaghetti. So actually, speaking of Core 2019, one point that wasn't really mentioned earlier in the article, but was mentioned in the recap at the bottom, and I forgot to put these in the notes, is, so if you're playing on Magic Online, just a heads up, we mentioned Karn and how to clarify the rules for Karn. They have not yet implemented that on Magic Online, and they are not going to be implementing that until Core Set 2019. So the colorless rule of Karn won't be an online, deck you have to worry about until Core 2019.
Yeah, because updates to MTGO take time.
However, all of these bannings and unbannings, the starting life total and stuff will go into effect May 30th.
There you go.
Yeah, so basically they kind of are nixing events coming up. They're suspending league play one-on-one queues on May 16th. So basically, Brawl is going to go dark on Magic Online for about a week or so. until those changes get put into effect on May 30th. You can play multiplayer Brawl and casual 1-on-1, but any kind of competitive level 1v1, it's going to be dark for 2 weeks. So a little bit of an inconvenience,
which is fine because
I know I could probably say this as well as other Magic Online players can say this, is take the time, implement this properly. Don't break Magic Online, please.
Don't mess it up. Don't mess it up.
So they have they just gave them until the end of the month to actually push it through, which is just fine.
Yeah.
So and there's a survey in the article, very bottom. We'll put the link to the survey as well in the show notes.
I already filled out the survey, so
there you go.
There you go. So we also wanted to kind of curtail this into a little discussion about BNR announcements, because there's a lot of reasons behind why certain cards or strategies need to get banned in collectible card games in general. Like my favorite example from not Magic. So Pokemon, the trading card game, has a very different system than Magic, which is really interesting because in Pokemon, one-sided Wheel of Fortune is fair, and they print it almost every single time they get the chance to. Ian, you would know this is the Pokemon or the Professor Oak cards. If you ever played did you ever play the Pokemon TCG?
Let's put it this way. I think the last Pokemon cards that I bought were for the Jungle expansion, which was their first expansion.
Oh yeah, I remember the Jungle expansion. That was fun times.
That was.
I just got back from summer camp, and then I was like, "Wait, there's new cards. Whatever, doesn't matter."
Yeah, that was. I'm pretty sure that was the last time I bought Pokemon cards to give a good idea as to how long I stopped playing that game.
Sure. So Professor Oak, and then also all the other Professor cards, basically say discard your hand, draw 7, and that card's fair in that format. In that game, that card is absolutely fair, which is kind of mind-boggling to Magic player. However, several years ago, they banned a card called Lysander's Gambit. Lysander is the villain from Pokemon X and Y, and Lysander's Gambit was Time Twister. So the Pokemon Company thought that would be a fair card to print for the Pokemon TCG, and then they had to ban it.
Yeah, that's
because it would
figure. The weakest power is the card that deserves to get banned the most,
and not one-sided Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah,
But yeah, so but it got banned because it removed decking as a win condition.
Oh,
that's why it got banned.
That makes sense. Like hoping
it was also busted, but
hoping to run your opponent out of cards and creatures.
Because they also have trying to draw from an empty deck as a lose condition, as well as knocking out their 6 prizes. But anyways,
gotcha.
But anyways, the big reasons why you ban a card is either to improve the competitiveness of other decks. I think the best way we could describe those bans are the most recent bans for Standard when they banned the Teamer Energy cards as well as the Ramen-Up Red cards. That was there to increase the competitiveness of the rest of the field because Teamer Energy was running over everything and Ramen-Up Red was keeping everything else down that had the best chance at beating Teamer Energy, and Teamer Energy just beat up on Mono Red a lot. And so that's one level of banning cards to knock down kind of the two or the most oppressive threats to bring them back to the rest of the field. As much as I would love to play Ramen-Up Ruins, please.
Yeah, the one thing that I kind of how I've always viewed, okay, is this card ban worthy? Is I kind of get sciencey with it. Like my personal evaluation is I look at it as kind of how I guess Einstein relativistic space, where like a black hole. And
you're going real deep.
Well, no, I'm saying like the gravitational effect of, say, you get a piece of paper basically, and you put a small little pebble on it, right? It's going to warp the paper a little bit. And then if you put like a giant freaking rock on it, it's going to really warp the paper. And like that's the thing, like black holes. Like, is this card a black hole or is this card a planet?
Fair.
Basically, like how much is this literally warping the fabric of the format to the point where it's just not recognizable?
Yeah, that's fair.
And that's
an interesting way of looking at it.
I figure like that's one way like to give like a visual representation of, you look at like, say something like Aetherworks Marvel plus the Eldrazi. That was like the equivalent of a black hole because like you literally had to effectively plan around that giant massive drop hole pulled down in your format, where if you don't plan around that, you're falling into it and you're going to get hosed. Like that's how I've always looked at these ban list things, and I figure it's a kind of interesting but like weird, quirky side angle to look at it.
Yeah.
But Baral was doing that. Baral was this giant black hole on the format, pulling the fabric of Brawl down with it. You remove that, it'll flex and let back, and you can have other commanders try and, take the spot and see if they're a planet or a moon or a sun-based impact in terms of the gravity of how it's going to, warp the format.
Yeah. And all of this usually is to, improve metagame diversity. Because like I said, like with the Teamer Energy and Mono Red bans, the goal was, hey, Standard is not fun when there's only 2 decks. Standard is not fun when there's only 1 deck. See Cawblade. Standard is not fun when there's one strategy that is just overwhelmingly popular, and then the only other viable strategy is the counter to that initial strategy. We're looking at Affinity and the mono red and the red-green decks that had a 15-card sideboard for Affinity. Back in Darksteel, I believe it was Darksteel Standard.
But anyways. Considered the very dark days of Standard, where it's like tournament attendance dropped to like utter low levels.
And that's not even touching, the absurd combo Winter that was Urza's block.
Or Cawblade.
Or Cawblade, yeah. And then also, different formats are going to have different methodologies for what is ban-worthy. Like for Commander, the methodology is usually like what cards that are legal in the format are hampering the overall amount of fun. It's a very utilitarian point of view on Commander, which is why cards like Primeval Titan and Sylvan Primordial and Prophet of Krufix got banned. Where it's like, these cards are really, really fun, but they're not fun when the game revolves around them, where it's like, okay, turn 2, I reanimate Primeval Titan. Alright, I'm going to mind control your Primeval Titan and attack. Well, I'm going to cast a Rite of Replication Kick targeting your Primeval Titan, and you see how this goes from there.
Yeah, it literally becomes a deal with this or copy this or else you die.
Exactly. For, 60-card formats, Modern and Legacy each have a turn-in rule. Modern has the very popular, or not very popular, but the very well-known turn 4 rule, where your deck cannot win consistently before turn 4. And Legacy has the turn 3 rule, where your deck should not be able to consistently win before turn 3.
Yes, there are outliers. Yes, there are decks that will go slower than that. We got it. Check Roger. In fact, turn 2 win. Modern, what up? Anyway.
Storm can win on turn 3 in Modern, but that's
and even then, like,
usually a perfect draw.
And the funny part is people still like cling to those turn methodologies as gospel, and they're not at all. Like everyone's like, oh, vintage, lol, turn 1 format. It's like, bro, have you seen a match of Vintage Super League? Yes, you will get the occasional game where a deck will cook off on turn 0.
I think in the first 5 seasons they only had 1 turn 1 kill.
Yeah, and like. Vintage is a grind fest, especially thanks to Workshops decks. Like,
yeah, especially in like the blue deck mirror matches. Which sure, one deck may be Grixis, one deck may be Jeskai, but they're just both blue decks.
Like let's put it this way:
trading Force of Wills and recalls. Oh man,
there's a reason why Young Pyromancer is not restricted, but Monastery Mentor is restricted.
It's true,
because Monastery Mentor, with that lovely prowess ability, gets out of hand, whereas making just a bunch of 1/1s, all right, cool, you make a bunch of 1/1s.
I mean, Mentor also goes infinite with 2 Sensei's Divining Tops.
Well, yeah.
And then Pauper, usually it's anything that lets you hyper cheat on mana. For example, every single Storm card, except for the Storm payoff, is banned.
Yeah.
Is Grapeshot banned in Pauper?
It is.
Okay, yeah. Every single Storm card in Pauper is banned, basically.
Yeah, and Empty the Warrens is. High Tide's banned. The Rituals.
Not Temporal Sundering. What's that card? It's 5 and a blue sorcery, bounce target permanent Storm.
Oh, I don't remember. But yeah.
It's on the ban list.
I think it is, yeah. It also depends if you're, playing certain ban lists or whatever. But anyway, also Unjustly Fun with free mana. Like the old Esper
Familiars.
Yeah, Esper Familiar decks that play Cloud of Fairies, which is the 1 in a blue flyer from Urza's Legacy that when it comes in the battlefield, untap up to 2 lands, but it also has cycling too, so you could cycle if you want to, get it back, cast it for 2 mana, untap 2 lands, start generating free mana out of it. But the real egregious breaker of this one was Peregrine Drake.
Oh,
because
man.
Tron was just like, yo, get right in my deck, homie. What's up? Welcome to the party. Because you cast Peregrine Drake, say you have 1 blue mana and 4 Tron lands. At a bare minimum, you are getting 10 mana. You are untapping with 10 mana.
I think that it was still really funny that they banned
untapping with 8. No, you're untapping with you're tapping 5, you're generating 10 mana, so you're untapping with 5 mana, but able to generate another 10. So you're untapping with 15 mana available.
Yeah.
You go it gets crazy, and especially since you're playing stuff like Prophetic Prism, so you just pay 2, filter and draw. So you can start filtering those colors into other things, and it's really easy to start like chaining Peregrine Drake into a Mole Drifter, into another Peregrine Drake, into a Mole Drifter, into another Peregrine Drake, into oops, I just Rolling Thundered you for 30 on one turn. Yeah. It's gross. It's like Storming Off, but with Tron lands.
Yeah, it's a little silly.
But yeah, stuff like that, and like we kind of tie this into just this is like Brawl and Smuggler's Copter and Sorcerer's Spyglass, and to a lesser extent on the kind of, I guess, quote-unquote warning list of Gideon's Intervention. That's something that affects how the format would play out in terms of, just being a case of, hey, let's make this unfun, but the whole point of the game is to have fun. So why are we here kind of thing?
Yeah, remember, Magic's a game, and we're here to enjoy ourselves.
Yep. And I mean, you might be enjoying yourself spiking out and destroying someone's face. However, that person may be like, you know what? Not going to play again. That wasn't fun at all. Oh, well. That said,
yeah,
I'm definitely looking for, so to kind of brief wrap it up. Remember, they talked about the updates and stuff. They worried about splitting the format. There was 5 interesting little things.
There are the 5 tenets of the Brawl philosophy. The only cards banned in Brawl are Baral, Chief of Compliance. That is, I'm so glad we don't have to do the Baral Brawl anymore.
Yeah.
Smuggler's Copter and Sorcerer's Spyglass. All the other cards are legal. If you want to play Karn as your commander in Brawl, you can just play any number of a basic land of your choice.
You can't play it till May 30th online.
Not until May 30th online.
Actually, no. May 30th online is when the events come back. Karn, you can't beat the commander until Core 19.
Core 19. Yeah,
Core 19.
And then also, one-on-one life total for Brawl is 20 as opposed to 30 for multiplayer. And I think that's it.
Yeah, from where I sit, overall, pretty good week for Magic.
I'd say so too. Like, it's pretty quiet right now because we're still kind of in the lulls before the Pro Tour. Also, we should be getting Battle Bond previews coming out in a little bit.
Next week, I think, is when Battle Bond previews start rolling. I think I saw the 14th.
Yes.
So this time next week. Unfortunately, we're going to miss it because we record on a Wednesday. No, I'm kidding. 14th is a Monday.
We should get a few.
Got him. Yeah, so we'll start talking about that because I personally love Two-Headed Giant. It's the format that I play with Lindsay all the time, so I'm pretty stoked.
I'm interested to see how Two-Headed Giant draft goes. Never done it before. That's gonna be spicy.
Yeah, the whole
I've looked up the rules on it. It's real weird.
Yeah, is it 4-pack draft or something like that? It's weird.
We'll talk about it when Battle Bond comes out.
Right, when we know more, because we only know that we've only got the baseline of it's 6-pack.
6 packs for sealed, 4 packs for draft.
4-pack for draft, and it's okay.
I think they'll explain more once the previews start.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. Again, Magic R&D hitting some new design space that might affect stuff like Commander, which will be cool.
I'm all for it.
Heck yeah.
Anyways, Ian, if people wanted to find you on the social medias, where can they do so?
You guys can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Dix, or you can DIX. You can find me in all sorts of chat rooms everywhere, all over the place. Say hi. It's cool. I don't mind. I don't bite hard. Anyway, Twitter at DixonIJ. That's DIXONIJ. And yeah, I tweet about all sorts of crazy stuff. So come for the magic, stay for the ridiculous sports shenaniganery.
Come for the magic times, stay for Harsh opinions on Philadelphia cheesesteaks.
And random internet crap posts.
That's true.
I can't say the other thing because we don't say that word on the show. Anyway, John, where can they find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter at jriley129. That's JWILEY129. You can also find me on Twitch at the same handle. So if you see me around, don't hesitate to say hi. Like I said, I've been putting stuff on YouTube. There should be a draft going up in the next few days of another Dominaria draft. I'll try to do a few more of those because Dominaria is a lot of fun. I am real interested to see how this format shakes out as time goes on. But thank you all so much for listening. On behalf of Ian, I'm John, and we'll talk to y'all next time.